What's good? It's way louder. I got too much bass in my voice. How are y'all doing this morning? You good? Yeah. Good. I'm gonna sit down if you don't mind. I might stand when I start messing with this stuff, but yeah, thank you, Creative Mornings. I have done one of these before back in 2020 when we were all in lockdown, and I can't remember the theme, but I do remember going over history of how my ears perceive sound and music. I truly believe that there's humans on earth that just hear things differently. Some people, when you hear music, you maybe pay attention to lyrics, or you may be just painting your own story in your mind. My brain is like, oh, that AC's got a cool tone to it. I wonder what I can do with it. I wonder how I can turn it into something that's like listenable. And that's what I'm here to talk about this morning. I want to expand on that a little bit. When Natalie told me the theme of ritual, I'm not gonna lie, I thought of the movie Midsummer. I was like thinking like Gregorian chants and cloaks and flower crowns and crazy stuff. And because I just don't use that word in my vocabulary very much. But then I was like, how are rituals practiced in music? So I went down this rabbit hole, and when you type in ritual music in YouTube, I'm not gonna lie, there's a ton of songs named with ritual in it. Dua Lipa and Madonna, they all have songs with the word ritual in it. I mean, you could just throw a rock, and every artist has a song with the word ritual, which is weird because I listen to so much music, and that word just goes way over my head. But then I always also associate the word ritual with routine, which is very interesting. But I went ahead and looked up the definition, and found that as a noun, it's a formal ceremony or series of acts that is always performed in the same way. Definitely Midsummer, right? And I was like, okay, I know that I'm on the right path. But then I also read this as an act or series of acts regularly repeated in a set, precise manner. And then I was like, this is actually perfect for what I'm doing right now, because I'm currently, as a musician, I am an electronic musician. And there's a little bit of difference. Like, I grew up playing instruments, and I worked in a studio for a long time, and I had spent a lot of time around acoustic instruments, but I was always really attracted to the electronic instruments, the synthesizers, the drum machines, the laptops. I loved programming things. I loved taking sounds and turning them into something else, constantly on this routine or this ritual of like trying to just create something that people would maybe hate or love. It didn't really matter to me. I always thought it was interesting. And lately I've been going down this path of discovering and really trying to create techno music and house music and dance music. As a young kid, I've always had this extreme, I just loved it. Ever since I was a little kid, I used to steal my mom's CDs, and she'd always listen to these like really outrageous artists and these really eccentric stuff. She was definitely like the cool mom, like trying to be cool, but then she'd get mad at me because her CDs would be missing, and that was me. But as I was diving down, and there was just all these sounds and these things, and these people who were creating this music, I could never find anything about them. The internet was just popping off. There wasn't a lot of information on these people, so I would have to go to the record stores and dig in the people's ears and ask questions, and I always heard tons of false stories and a lot of lies, but I believed this stuff. But normally down the road, I always said, one day I'll get to it, one day I'll get to it, one day I'll get there. And then I think now is the time of my life where I finally have been able to express myself in this manner. I think mainly because as of this year, I've been DJing for 20 years. Wow. I've been behind the decks, playing festivals, traveling the world, entertaining people, playing dance music. And I'm like, I'm gonna make this one day and it's gonna bang. But I've always refrained because there's always other things calling me. There's always other people practicing other rituals when they're creating, and I felt more attracted to that or those projects then. And now I feel like maybe it's my time to kind of exercise that. Going down this, I want to just talk about electronic music. Does anybody here like electronic music or dance music? Okay. Does anybody like going dancing? Dancing a lot, okay. But what about like experimental stuff? Does anybody like experiment? Okay, I know you two do. There's Shody. But anybody else in the room, anybody like kind of ambient music or like, you know, Boards of Canada, kind of stuff like that? Aphex Twin. You know, that's the music to me that I studied very, very deeply. And some people call it like academic music, but I don't think that's a good term. Mainly because a lot of these musicians didn't go to school for it. They just bought these computers, they took them apart, they broke them, they put them back together, and then they made these beautiful sounds. The ritual practice was constantly just trying to evolve with the things that they had at the time. And a lot of it wasn't very good stuff. It was very cheap, it was very accessible, and back in the day, in the 80s per se, even in Detroit, Michigan, you had these really young, poor African-American kids who really couldn't afford these like beautiful, lush, huge drum machines people like Prince was using and Queen, and but they were going and bought this machine called an 808 because it was supposed to go on the market and it didn't really sell very well, so it'd be in the pawn shops for like $200, $300, $400, which is more affordable than $4,000. So these kids called the Belleville Three, you know, were buying these machines and acquiring this cheap equipment, and they were just trying to make the machines that would replicate the sounds of Motor City. Motor City, obviously you had Ford, you had the plants, you had a very industrial sound, and that sound is always extremely repetitive, extremely on a kind of a 4 count, you know? And as a musician, when you live in that environment, your music tends to kind of cycle in that way. Even just to branch off a little bit with Jamaican music or reggae or ska or whatever you want to, you know, whatever realm you're in, you know, that music tends to kind of be like that upchuck thing. That stuff is reason because it's like the power cycles in Jamaica in a lot of neighborhoods were messed up. So when they were listening to the record players, it would slow down and speed up. And that's how they thought music was actually made. And then they start making this like kind of bouncy music. But in Detroit, the power was really good. So that stuff was linear as hell. And like literally you can just, that music was very, you know, rudimental. So when they started making this music, they didn't really think about filling large arenas and taking over the planet. They didn't think of that on another part of the world that people would end up falling in love and this stuff would just take over the globe. They were just trying to make this like machine music because they were weird, you know, and they were nerdy and they couldn't go out in the streets and they couldn't like really associate or relate to anybody else. They were just like, this is how we speak our language. So their ritual practice was just trying to push the boundaries and impress each other and just keep creating. And then that birthed Detroit techno. And Detroit techno went off to, you know, they were making it and they were playing it in the city, but then a couple Germans who, you know, came in and they were like, yo, this is crazy. They took those records, they bought them up, they took them back, and all of a sudden there's a huge explosion in Berlin. And then Berlin now, well, this is controversial, but Berlin is now probably the new capital of techno music. If you go there, you go to places like Tresor, Berghain, they wear all black, and you know, they smoke cigs, they don't sleep, you know? But all in all, they love the music. They study it in colleges, they teach it in elementary schools. There's like it's a whole ecosystem over there, just based upon this music, this ritual practice of these 3 nerdy kids in their bedrooms. They never knew that it would explode into this thing. So, just a little background on that. I became attracted to it because I can relate to that as a human being. As me, I grew up in this town. I grew up in a suburb of Omaha and Millard, and I couldn't relate to anybody I grew up with. Like literally nobody. Like I had a small group of friends, most of them were immigrants, and even then they didn't really like techno at all. They're just like, yo, you're scaring me, man. You're scaring my parents. This is like, you know, like System of a Down's cool, like, yeah, we can rock that. But no Jeff Mills, please turn that off. And, you know, as I've grown older, it was always like a private thing. It felt like I always had to like kind of listen to it in my headphones, you know? But there was a beauty in that. Every day I would wake up and my ritual practice was I'd put on these headphones, cheap Magnavox, no bass headphones, and I'd walk to school every day, back and forth. Some days we'd get rides and we'd carpool, but I always like walking. It's something I do practice a lot till this day. I still bike to work every day, like 98% of my days I still bike to work, sometimes walk. I just love it because it gives me the opportunity to really hone in and focus on these things and study these artists and study the craft to keep myself sharp. And as a kid, I'm listening to all these obscure CDs over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just warping my mind. It's creating this like monster inside of my head. And I'd go home and I'd try to create this stuff, and I'm just trying so hard and I cannot quite get there. And then all of a sudden, you know, I got enough money to save up and bought a MacBook Pro, and I ran that thing straight into the ground. And then it got stolen in New York City. I was having a great time. Hey, no, it was great. I got another one, and then I ran that thing into the ground, and I DJ'd on this thing, and it made tons of great records. And the point I was trying to get at was, you know, finding my venture into techno music or into house music was definitely a very rocky journey, but it definitely took a lot of practice and a lot of studying and a lot of just repetition, just like the music in the format is. And with a lot of musicians, whether you play guitar or bass or drums or you sing, it's always practice and repetition. But the random thing about these other instruments is there's only a few formats that allow you to improvise. And this is the beauty thing about techno and electronic music, is improv is the heart and soul of the entire thing. So what you see in front of you are these 3 machines, which I chose from my arsenal at home that I've been building for quite some time and spent too much money on. And these 3 machines to me I chose them for a few reasons. One, because I bought them because they challenge the way I'm supposed to think about music. You know, I went to work yesterday and I had 3 laptops open. And I'm answering emails on one, and I'm working on Fashion Week on the other. Abby, don't tell my boss. And then on the other, there's just stuff rendering for the content we're making at Bemis, right? I work at the Bemis Center currently. And so that laptop's on fire. It's screaming, the fans are going off. I'm emailing on my personal laptop, and the other one I'm just trying to click away. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, I can't create like this. It's not a creative thing. And when you do that so much, you start to buy machines that don't necessarily have many screens, or the screens are very limited, and they don't allow you to like focus on these 13 to 16 or 27-inch screens. They just allow you to focus on what's there and using your ears, and constantly using my ears. So with the improvisation in techno music, it's like I wanted to create machines where a lot of accidents can happen and a lot of discovery can happen. So generally, today I want to talk about my ritual practice, a ritual practice in improvisational, I call it improvisational therapy, but we're going to say improvisational creativity. How many how many of you are musicians in here? Who want to play music? Just you two? Any other creatives like graphic designers, videographers, photographers? Great, visual people. So y'all stare at screens every day. But the thing is, you know, much respect to that, because that's just the nature of our lives. The beauty with music and a lot of instruments is, you know, with music you have this vast array of tools, and a lot of them don't have screens. You really have to sit there. You really have to go over this repetitive practice over and over to kind of gain that. But how do you expand on that is you have to add tools, and you have to add all these things to kind of really push the boundaries. And to me, the synthesizer has become my favorite instrument because it allows me to really take things to another level. I could just take a very simple sound and then turn it into something else. But before I dive into that, I will get to a little bit of a demonstration of how my creative process and my creative flow goes. But I do want to kind of elaborate on ritualistic practices within techno, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. Because I'm not going to lie, what I may make today may not sound good at all. It may be really bad. But that's the beauty of creating things. That's the beauty of trying to practice or stay on your ritual, is that you have to go through the bad to reach good. But I did pull a few quotes about ritual practices, which, you know, it's funny, I listen to these artists all the time, and I just read these things, you know, earlier this week, and I was like, oh, dang, all right, that makes a lot of sense. Jeff Mills, who I described earlier, Jeff Mills is a Detroit techno legend. He's an amazing human. I highly look up to him. We kind of look similar. I'm trying to look like him when I'm older. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to wear suits. I'm trying to like be in a jazz band, you know, and with a cigarette in my mouth, but it's never lit, you know, like kind of vibe. But Jeff Mills often discusses his ritualistic aspects of creating and performing techno music through the views as a powerful medium that goes beyond like entertainment. He thinks of shaping the mind and enhancing our lives through dancing, but not as a form of like serious expression, right? And he believes that it's one that can enlighten and evoke a deeper emotions and thoughts in the listeners. When he's playing his music in the room, he's taking you down this really deep, really unique path, something that is just really is trying to challenge your mind, but also like kind of keep you in the flow. He also believes that this perspective aligns with his belief in music as kind of a nonverbal storytelling, where a DJ set becomes a journey through the fantastic or the amazing, driven by the DJ's feelings of the moment, almost as the DJ is channeling a ritualistic experience that transcends ordinary reality. Moreover, Mills emphasizes the urgency in creation, driven by the fleeting nature of life. He suggests that this urgency is akin to a ritual, where the act of creating music is about capturing and preserving the moment or vision almost as a way to pass on something essential to others. Yeah, I just really felt like that was something really amazing. And the thing about it is when you go and explore this music, this techno music, usually it's in these dark rooms, you know, it's kind of big. And honestly, I brought a lot of people into those rooms and they get really scared. And I'm like, no, just stay and listen and go in. You don't need a drug, you don't need anything crazy. All you need to do is just listen and take your time and observe. And then over time, you start to see this person like start to clock in. But the thing about it, it's more than just a singular experience. It's a unified experience. Whether there's 100 or 5,000 people in a room, they're all sharing this like unified energy, almost like if you're at a sports game or something like that. But it's to this repetitive motion. It's to these weird sounds. It's taking you to another place. And once you get locked in, you really start to see the art for what it is. The best way to kind of put it is, who knows Rothko, the artist Rothko, right? You know, black paintings on the wall. I went to the Rothko Chapel in Houston many years ago, and I was on tour, and I walked in, and I'm like, this man is a millionaire off this? Like I walk in, and I'm like, yo, what is this all? I wear black every day. What is going on here? And they're like, no, just chill. Like, just sit and observe. So I'm like walking around, and we sit in there. When I left, it was 3 hours later. I didn't even realize how fast the time passed, because these huge, like, you know, I'm telling you, like 12-foot by 8-foot paintings circled the wall, and there was only natural light. And the only reason why I knew my day was over is because the light was getting dim, and I'm like, oh, it's getting dark outside. We should go back to the bus. But like realistically, the place put me in this intrinsic space, a space where I can meditate and feel comfortable. And that's something that I just was like, it changed my whole life. I'm like, if I can make like the Rothko of techno music, that'd be tight. So, you know, that's really interesting. Another quote is from Susan Ciani, who is also an amazing electronic producer. She's produced stuff for like pinball machines and tons of albums, and she does stuff in surround sound. She has often referred to her interaction with the Buchla synthesizer as a deeply intuitive and almost sacred practice. She describes the process of creating sound with her synthesizers as a dialogue, where each session is a unique ritualistic experience that allows her to channel her emotions into her music. And the one thing I really like about her approach is she mostly performs solo, but when she's using her Buchla synthesizer is not an all-in-one machine. It's made up of tiny little compartments that they put together. It's like a Lego set, you know? But each Lego serves a different purpose. And then when the set is complete, you have this house full of all these things that do random things, you know? It's like, okay, here's my blender, here's my microwave, here's my stove, and here is my vacuum cleaner, and they're all working at the same time, you know? Vacuum is cleaning the house because I'm spilling stuff, and the stove is blowing rice out of the pot, and the microwave is beeping because I forgot to leave the thing in there, and then you're trying to figure out how to combine all these into a very rhythmic approach with all this technology that's communicating with each other. So when you see her perform, which she still does till this day, it's a very unique experience, because you walk in and you're not necessarily like, this isn't a very formatted worth of music, but it's all working, it's all talking to each other. Her ritualistic practice is trying to get things to talk. And that's really what it is with techno music. It's all about just trying to get your machines to talk to each other and to try to convey a language or speak in conversation to the audience. So that being said, I wanted to kind of go through a little bit of my approach to how I discover sounds. For a while I got really, or I'm still to this day, I'm very deeply into sound design. I spend sometimes, that's why I'm an audio engineer full-time, I spend way more time adjusting how the radio sounds versus listening to it. That's why I drove my friends nuts back in the day, because they'd be like, they just, no bass, all bass, no bass, all bass. I'm like, yeah, you know? And then my best friends, you know, are also sound engineers, so when we're all in the car together, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. We're arguing about the stupidest things. But I love it because we appreciate each other's advice, but you know, we're always changing each other's perspectives. So anyways, I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to have the music talk for a little bit. I won't take too much of your time, and then maybe I, you know, can answer some questions if you're cool with it. Are you guys cool with that? Okay, now bear in mind, this is straight off the top. I really don't know what's gonna happen. It could be good, it could be bad, but just please bear with me. 2-2. So you can kind of get an idea of where I'm going at, right? The ritualistic approach. I had no idea what I was gonna do. I knew that I was gonna start out with all techno music's got that, Everybody knows, and making that is easy, but how do you make the other stuff? I just told the machine, spew out random notes, and I'm just gonna try to, come up with something. But everything in here is just me turning knobs and giving it life and studying what each and every component in this thing does. And then my brain's like, oh, what if I make it go shoo? Or what if I make it go, like I'll be at home, my partner hates it because she'll hear me with the headphones on and she'll hear me going, like all the time. Because that's like what my brain is doing and that's the only way I can express it. And then, even last night I left the machine on and I ran to the kitchen and she comes back, she's like, what is that sound? And you hear in the headphones, it's just like all this. No, just, And it's just, she's trying to watch the DNC convention. It's like, it's driving me nuts. I'm like, listen, if they say freedom or joy, just take a drink. That's all you gotta do. But no, that is it. That is my ritualistic approach to creativity. And I hope that if you can each take something from this discussion, is that when you approach your own sort of creativity, try to invest in the things that allow you to create without expectation, If you, remember photographers, you remember Lomo cameras? Remember going to Urban Outfitters, you buy those really cheap, dumb cameras and you take photos and they turn out, half of it's blurry and the other half is fun. I loved those because you can snap photos, you never knew what was gonna come out of it, and they always ended up on your wall with your friends. And if you can find those kinds of tools that are just fun, maybe inexpensive or expensive, that allow you to just continue that, then your ritualistic practice gets better. It always expands and grows with time. And as a musician, for all the people out there, if you want to practice music, or even for the DJs or people that want to practice performing other people's music in front of crowds, it's always about trying to take that unrealistic approach as your ritual. It's pick songs that are going to just maybe throw the room off and then bring them back in, I love playing, I'll bring this machine and then I'll play the weirdest atonal techno and I'll put a Taylor Swift acapella on it. And I know my coworker Abby would be like, listen, I like techno now. I like it now. T-Swift's in it. So, it's just about trying to be unconventional, but also it is a practice. It is an art form. It is something you have to constantly go at. So, yeah, when I'm at home, this is it. And I'm always hitting record, but a lot of the stuff I record doesn't end up being heard by the world. It's usually for me to get on my bike, put on my AirPods, bike to work, and listen to it and be like, cool, I like that 3-second bleep bleep thing. I'm gonna put that in an actual song, So it's about trying to take those snippets from your ritualistic approach. Even when you practice routine every day, you never know, just try to do something unconventional. Brush your teeth differently. Try a new yoga pose next time you do yoga. Make your coffee a little bit different, always try to add a little bit of flair, add something different. See if you can change that beep sound in your microwave every day. It might change how you actually interact every day. And some microwaves allow you to do that. Or take the time and be like, what if I changed the jingle in my washing machine? How would that change my day? Because every day, everybody does their laundry every week, but you hear the same jingle for 18 years. Until it breaks. And then you get a new jingle, and then you're with your new machine, and you're damn, that's crazy. My homie Neil bought a new machine, and I was like, hey, does it have a jingle in it? He's like, no. I'm like, you better take that back, bro. You're an audio engineer, bro. You need a new jingle in your life. Or when you get a new iPhone, change your ringtone. You don't know these things, these sounds and stuff impact you differently every day. It's always a part of your ritualistic approach to grab your phone and check your messages. But what if you change the beat? Maybe you don't like it. Maybe change it to something you don't like so you don't actually look at your text messages. That's what I do, I made my ringtones the AIM sounds, and they're so nostalgic. They got the mood I'm like, yeah, I don't want to check that. I don't want to go back down that horrific middle school, treacherous DMs, trying to DM your crush, and she's like, nah, I don't like you. I'm telling you, I didn't fit into nothing when I grew up, man. But anyways, that's my approach to making music. That's my approach to creativity. If you all have any questions or any thoughts, please feel free to ask now or come and find me. I'm more than happy to talk about these machines in more in depth or share any knowledge or wisdom